In World War I, the story of American aircraft production was generally not regarded as one of the great successes in American history. They had a lot of problems. The one highlight of that period, however, was what you see behind me, the Liberty engine. That's a nickname for it. It was originally called the USA Standardized Engine. But this came out of the idea that for the United States to build a lot of airplanes, we need to do so leveraging American ideas of mass production. This is what you think about with Henry Ford and the assembly line that really kind of epitomized American industry in the early part of the 20th century. When we got into the war, Europe had been fighting World War I for over 2 years, and so we were able to learn a lot of lessons from them. And one that the airplane equipment people took away from that was in engines. They looked at their airplane industries, and they were using, in England, they were using over 2 dozen, or actually I think it was 3 dozen types of airplane engines. In France, it was over 4 dozen airplane engine types. Well, you can imagine the difficulties in producing those, but also in sustaining those in the field. You had to have spare parts for all of these. The logistics were a nightmare. So when they decided they were going to build airplanes in the United States for the war, standardization was high on that list. And a man named Jesse Vincent, who was the chief engineer for Packard automobiles, really came up with this idea of, hey, let's try to use one type of engine and we'll just either shrink it or grow it depending on the need. And so he got together with people from the Army Air Service, and then a few days later, another engine expert, Albert J. Hall, and they designed the Liberty engine. And as the story goes, they were kind of locked in a hotel room, and they borrowed ideas from Europe and American engines to create one standardized engine that could be built in different cylinder sizes, and that's what you see behind me. There's a 4-cylinder version, a 6-cylinder version, an 8-cylinder, and then the most ubiquitous of those was a 12-cylinder engine. And so these were built by the thousands. There were over 20,000 of them built during the war. And this was great because they were able to leverage American production, mostly from automobile companies like Packard and Ford and Lincoln, to build these using kind of existing assembly lines and then adding a few more. Well, this really put McCook Field on the map. This is where Jesse Vincent went to go work, first as head of engine design, but then actually he headed the entire equipment division there at McCook until World War I ended. And so this was a great example of how they were able to first design an engine, but then also support it throughout its development cycle. And these are kind of the activities that merge what's the modern day Air Force Research Laboratory and the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. You have a design, it's going to go into an airplane, and then how do we improve this? How does the testing that's going on in McCook Field identify weaknesses? How does testing that's going on out in the field or in test airplanes find weaknesses? How do you fix those? How do you change those in productions? And then how do you sustain that once it's in operations? And the Liberty engine really became the standard in the interwar period as well, because there were so many of them around that Congress didn't want to pay to build a lot of new ones. So that was really a key element for experimentation after the war as well.